Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha on 44 different platforms around the world. And my name is Aage, and I'm the host. And my co-host Nori couldn't make it, so we'll just muddle through on our own here, and hopefully we'll be okay. So anyway, we are also transmitting on the Conscious Awakening Network. Gotta go have a look at that. There's an awful lot of good stuff over there. They have close to 50 different shows that talk about all the stuff that you and me need to know about. And then I also want to let you know that if you are watching on YouTube, that's the place to be, because we can also communicate with you through the chat room. So otherwise, I would say that you can get a hold of me and Nori by going to broadcastteamalpha.com and find the contact features. Send us an email. We'll get the email and we'll get back to you and see what we can do for you, answer questions or whatever. And now we're going to have some fun. We're going to get into space tonight. And Preston Dennett is going to take us there. He's going to be the space cadet tonight. I want to say a couple of words about him because I think everybody knows him, because he has written 32 books on strange encounters with extraterrestrials and UFOs and interdimensional beings and whatever else you can possibly think on. He got it in his books. And he is one of the, I would say, the best researchers I know when it comes to extraterrestrials and UFOs, because he's got it all in his books. And now this you want to hear. So welcome to the show, Preston.
Aage, it's an honor and a delight. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah, you're returning here. You've been on here a couple of 3 times, and I enjoyed every moment of it. So now you do an awful lot of research every day. From what I hear is that you're almost much of a workaholic as I am. so so you're finding some interesting stuff out there, and there is so much to talk about. Where would you like to take us first?
It's so hard to decide because there's so much going on. I just watched the recent congressional hearings, which was very interesting. I'd love to see that this subject is getting a lot of attention. It was mostly talk, no action, though I will say Burleson, was that his name, did make some very vehement statements like it's time for action.
Yeah.
I was really, very much impressed by the testimony of, his name is Borland, Dylan Borland, I think it was,
Something like
who
that,
was, very emotional, and how he had a close encounter and received some pretty vicious reprisals as a result of it, having his security revoked and his unemployment or his employment in jeopardy. He was very emotional as he gave his testimony. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad to see that this subject is getting serious attention. It's about time. I've been doing this for decades now. I think my specialty is, I really like looking into cases of direct contact. People who've had face-to-face encounters with ETs or been taken on board. But I also love finding patterns in these many, many cases, because we have, Augie, it's got to be at least a couple of million documented encounters in the worldwide databases, like MUFON and NUFORC. So it's really interesting to me when I find patterns of activity that people haven't really looked at or noticed before. And we were talking a little bit before we went on. One of them was encounters over drive-in theaters.
Yeah, that's tell us about that one, because that the ET wanted to watch the movie. Well, not really, but
Maybe
sounds
there's a yeah, this was something that really shocked me because you're in this field and you think you've heard it all. And then of course you find out that you haven't because some stuff like it's like wow. Because I'd heard actually I had years and years ago where I worked at a business office, a new employee came in. Her name is Claudia, and she found out I was a UFO researcher and she got all excited. She's like, "Oh, I have a story for you." I'm like, "Great, let's talk over lunch." And she did have a story. It was amazing. She was just a young kid, and this is in Southern California at the Paramount Drive-In Theater, which is a large theater, holds hundreds of cars. This was around 1981, I believe it was. Gosh, maybe it was 71, but thereabout. At any rate, she and her whole family were there, her two parents and her little sister, when suddenly she noticed that her parents were not watching the movie. They were kind of staring dumbly to the side of the screen. And she looked to the side and she saw cars driving out of the theater, not even bothering to pull off the little speakers that she used to have attached to your cars. For those of who don't know what drive-in theaters for are,
yeah,
used to have little portable speakers that you would attach to the side of your car. And you'd remove it when the movie was
yeah,
over. Well, they weren't even bothering to do that. They were dropping their drinks and popcorn and fleeing the theater. So she looks around and sees right to the side of the screen a massive classic flying saucer. Silver saucer shaped, shiny like a silver spoon is how she put it. So chrome like. There was no real markings on it, and it was silent except for a small swooshing noise, which could be heard. And just sitting there, she said it was almost as if it was watching us watch the movie. So of course, no one was actually watching the movie at this point,
no,
and it cleared out half the theater. Now here's the weird part, Aage. I've run because I got a lot of cases of this. This is the first one, but here is what's so unusual. After this encounter, they forgot it. They forgot about it, didn't think about it, didn't talk about it for years until she was a young adult, and she was in the kitchen with her mom, and this person called into the radio show. It was a call-in show, and started describing an encounter he had at the Paramount Drive-In Theater with a UFO that came down and was right to the side of the screen. So Claudia and her mother are listening to this, and a light bulb goes off, and Claudia turns to her mother and says, "Mom, we were there, weren't we? Do you remember that?" And Claudia's mother is like, "Yeah, I do. How could we have forgotten that? Why didn't we ever talk about this?" That's a weird effect that sometimes happens after a UFO encounter. It just kind of goes away from a person's mind. That was the
yeah.
first one. That was the first one I ever heard of, and I thought it was a one-off.
Well, there are more than one of them visiting theaters.
Yeah, well, here's how it kind of rolled out. Because every now and then I would hear one. I wrote UFOs over California, and I found a couple of others.
Hmm.
But when I started writing UFOs over various states like New York, well, really it was Colorado that knocked me over. Because while doing the research for UFOs over Colorado, I ran into three cases in a row. One was at the Mile High Theater in Denver. It was Dr. Zhivago, I think it was. And this UFO showed up and was blinking its lights at the people in the audience, and they were flashing their headlights back at it. So there was this interaction going on.
Oh
And
man.
and, and then I found another one and a third, all in a row, while I'm searching for cases. And that got me thinking, I'm like, I wonder if this is a thing. Because I've got you can see my bookshelf behind me. I've got, I don't know, probably 1,000 books. Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't ever remember reading about this in any of my books. I did a look through them, and I did find one case, but I'm like, well, maybe this isn't a thing. But then I started going to the UFO news clipping service, which
Hmm.
is a gold mine. I'm so glad I subscribed to that. from the beginning and stayed with it for decades because I hit pay dirt with that and with
Yeah.
the various databases like APRO, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, MUFON, NUFORC, National UFO Reporting Center, and others. And I found 10 and then 20 and then 40. I found over 100 cases.
Really?
So over 100. And this is not like someone's just sitting out at a theater and they see a light go by. Because I discarded those. Because you're
Yeah.
out at night, you're out late at night for hours. Your chances go way up of seeing a UFO. That's not what I'm talking about here. In every case that I include in this 100 cases, the theaters were essentially targeted. Seriously, these craft appeared way on the horizon or perhaps up in the sky and came directly for the theater. And in each and every single case of this, they come down to low level. I would say a couple of 100 feet would be on the higher end, though there's a few that are, 1,000 or more. But generally speaking, they come right over the screen or right to either side or to the parking lot. And then it's long lasting. It's
Yeah.
not just a quick flyby. And then they will flash their lights or even release smaller craft. They will put on a show, a display that is far better than the movie itself,
Yeah.
honestly. Sometimes affecting the movie, sometimes causing a panic, a fear reaction, but more often not. Uh, but there's nothing like this in the literature. Because I looked. There are cases where UFOs have shown up over sporting events. A few.
Hmm.
I found 10 or 20 over, concerts, perhaps. Again, I found a handful of cases, but nothing like this. These are very widely viewed, long-lasting, low-level sightings. The only thing that's at all comparable would be sightings over schoolyards.
Yeah.
But, but boy, did I find some crazy cases over drive-in theaters, and
Hmm.
traced some personally. I mean, I interviewed some witnesses firsthand,
Yeah.
and I have definitely a few favorite cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they've been above schoolyards too, and one of the more favorite, or should I say, famous ones, they are over in, do you know the one over in, I think, Botswana in Africa? I think,
Right,
you remember?
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, yeah.
Yeah.
That,
No,
the extraterrestrial had a little smaller metallic robot with them. So they're not alone either.
no, no. The schoolyard cases are amazing because about I found over 100 of those. It's closer to 200 now, and I'm
Oh.
still finding drive-in theater cases as well. Schoolyard cases are more common for sure, but just as widely viewed. I love those cases because they're daylight cases. And get this, Aage, 1/3 of those schoolyard cases involve landings and or humanoids, which are
Yeah.
almost, the drive-in theater cases have maybe 3 or 4 humanoid accounts. By and large, they're what we would call close encounters of the first kind or second. Simple sightings with 10 or so affecting the theater in some way, such as turning off the movie or making the screen waver or something along those lines. But after I took a deeper look at all the drive-in theater cases, I realized, you know what? I think we should actually categorize these as close encounters of the fifth kind, meaning
Yeah.
human initiated, because in effect, these sightings are being provoked by human actions. It might not have been intentional, but here we are all parked in a theater at night, sending out big beams of light, huge movie screens. And if you've ever seen an aerial view of a drive-in theater, you can see it from outer space.
Oh,
You
yeah.
really can.
Yeah, I have.
They make a very prominent footprint. They're very
Yeah.
visible. So I can only imagine what the ETs must think when they're like, what's going on down there? What are those bright
Yeah.
lights? What are they looking at?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think I figured out what's going on with the drive-in theater cases. Don't think they're watching the movie because generally they don't stay for the whole length of it. There's a
Yeah.
few. And I'm wondering, gosh, why are they doing this? I even analyzed the movies. Like maybe they're coming for a certain type of movie. But no, it was Outlaw Josie Wales,
Yeah.
Exorcist, Jurassic Park, The Simpsons movie, James Bond. I mean, you name it. So I don't know that that's a prominent pattern. Ultimately, what I decided, and I think this is just based purely on the behavior of the UFOs and UFO occupants, is that they are putting on a publicity campaign. They are showing themselves intentionally. This is where I'm speculating a little bit, in effort to announce their presence, to let people know we're not alone.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that is almost inescapable because, generally speaking, UFOs are somewhat evasive. They don't come down and stay over a crowded city for hours at a time.
No.
They come down, they do what they're doing, and off they go.
Yeah.
Not in these
Uh,
cases. The UFO researchers call this a display, and that's what these clearly are.
yeah. I wonder too. When you have this sighting, let's say over a movie theater, and if you know the date on it, have you ever gone to the local newspaper and see what did they write about it? Have you ever
Where I
tried that?
found, yeah, I haven't pulled them up or anything, but I have scoured the archives.
Hmm.
And that's where I found almost all of the reports because
Yeah.
this almost never goes national. The vast majority of these reports are in local newspapers. And in fact, there was one at Prince Edward Island in Canada. This is interesting to me because it's primarily a US thing, drive-in theaters. But I found them around the world. There was one at Prince Edward Island, Canada, where the UFOs showed up repeatedly over one theater so many times that they actually put it on the marquee, advertising, saying, if you want to see a UFO, come to our theater. They keep showing up. So,
Wow, that is really something.
yeah, I found some really interesting things. There was one case that really kind of provided some really interesting information. This one was at the Terrace Drive-In in California in August of 1952, where there was a couple of hundred people at this theater. And I know where this is. This is in Bakersfield, California, and not too far from LA. So all these people are at a theater. This is 1952, mind you, the very beginning of the modern age of UFOs. And this cylindrical UFO drops down out of the sky, and as it always does, stops right over the screen, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet above it, and starts flashing lights. This is what they do. This is why I'm like, it's obviously a display. This one
Yeah.
was on the shorter end. It did this for just a few moments, and took off like a bullet, leaving a tracer of lights behind it. But everyone in the theater saw it. Just happened to
Wow.
be a military officer there. Because back in those days, if you were a normal citizen, nobody listened to you. They were only listening to you if you had
Yeah.
military training.
Hmm.
So this officer decides he's going to call the local sheriff station and speaks to Sheriff Leroy Hatfield, and who takes his report. And as soon as the sheriff hangs up the phone, it rings again. It's another person who had just been to the theater. He received a whole stream of calls. He's like, "Stop, I'm going down there." Gets down there. This is, a half an hour after it's happened. And there's still 100
Ah,
people there. He's taking all their testimonies, and he got a pretty clear picture of what's going on. There was still 20, 30 people who wanted to talk to him. He's like, "No, not talking to you. I've got enough testimony. I'm going to submit it to the Air Force," which he did, to the closest Air Force base, which happens to be Edwards Air
mm.
Force Base, UFO Central.
Yeah.
This is where it gets so interesting, Aage. I couldn't believe what I found. I found this report. It's declassified. It was classified. Now it's declassified. And this report was sent to Edwards Air Force Base, and the officer who took the report marked it action in red letters and sent it to the commanding general at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to the head of intelligence at Washington, D.C., and to Ent Air Force Base in Colorado, which tracks all the incoming and outgoing air traffic in our country. So you can't, at this time, our government is flat up denying if anything to the UFO phenomenon. If you think you saw a UFO, you're lying. You're on drugs. You're an idiot. It's hoaxes, hallucinations, misperceptions, mental illness. It was disingenuous. They knew from the beginning that this was real, and this is a good example of it. And one final note, of the 100 cases that I have, not a single one made Project Blue Book's unidentified list. Not one of them. They called it a balloon, temperature inversion, a star. I've got some amazing cases.
Yeah, and there's not much swamp gas in Colorado anyway, so no, they even knew.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I
Can I tell you
also. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I tell you my favorite case?
Okay.
I just love this one because I got to talk to the guy directly, and it's such a good example of this. It's one of the ultimate drive-in theater cases, which took place in South Hutchinson, Kansas in 1966. The witness is Pat Mitchell, a great guy. He was at the South Hutch Theater, which was brand new. It has a huge screen. It's like 52 feet wide, 120 feet high. It's massive.
Ooh.
And he's with his friend, and they got there early. They're like 19, 20 years old, parked in the middle, got their snacks, hooked up their speaker, and are watching James Bond. And it's right at the most exciting part of the movie. And this is often what happens. It's either right as the movie starts, right at the climax is when these things show up. And it's the climax of the movie. And he turns to his friend, he's like, "Do you see that?" Because right behind the screen, way off in the distance, was a very bright light, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger very quickly. And in about the space of 2 minutes or so, it came right up to the side of the screen, right to the right of the screen, and it was a classic flying saucer with colored lights all around it, totally silent, half the width of the screen. So that would be, 25 feet.
30.
Yeah. And lower than the actual level of the screen itself. So this is, maybe 70 feet off the ground. And it's just sitting there for 5 minutes. Everyone goes dead quiet. Some are getting out of their cars. He didn't. He and his friend just stared through the windshield at this thing. This thing goes behind the screen, disappears from view behind the screen, comes out the other side on the left, goes up, 20 feet or so. It's like right above the screen now. Stays there for 5 minutes. And then, as if to make sure that everyone there is seeing it, it does one complete revolution around the entire parking lot, goes over the screen, then starts following the exit out, right over the exit road to the theater, and goes down this road at 10, 20 miles an hour. So what happens? A convoy of 20, 30, 40 cars follows this craft out of the theater, including Pat, who I interviewed. And so they follow this craft for, get this, 6 miles. Now, this craft is not going over any fields. It's going directly over the road. Directly over the road. For 6 miles at about 20 miles an hour. And there's a convoy of 30 or 40 cars following it. And finally, it stops, moves off the side of the road, goes 100 feet up, and stays there for another 5 or 10 minutes. Everyone's in the road. They're like, "Oh my God, it's a flying saucer. This is crazy." And darts straight up, becomes a star-like object, and is gone. And there's an interesting aftermath to this one too. He worked
Wow.
for the newspaper as a photographer. He's like, I didn't have my camera. You know, who brings a camera to a drive-in theater? But he works
Oh
with the
man.
newspaper, and all these people were like, "Oh, I'm going to go straight to the newspaper." Uh, so he's expecting a story to come in the newspaper the next day, and it doesn't. So he waits a
Hmm.
couple of days because maybe they're collecting testimony. He waits 2 or 3 days, no story. So he goes into the newspaper. He knows them, and he says, "What's up with the UFO at the South Hutch Theater?" Every single person he talked to played dumb. Now he talked to other people, went to them and said, "Did you go to the newspaper's office?" And they're like, "Yes, I did." So he tells them the whole story. They're not interested. Turns out that government folks showed up and quashed the story. They said, "You are not publishing this story." Not the only evidence of a cover up I found doing the investigation for this particular type of encounter.
Yeah.
So many of them. It's insane, Aage. It's just crazy to me. I found them all the way
I
up to 2018 cases.
yeah. That's kind of amazing that there should be somebody at the movie theater with a camera.
Yep.
I imagine there was, but where are those pictures? I would love to see them.
There's been a few who tried, but it just doesn't work that well as filming lights at night. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and you see little blurring things, and with the schoolyard encounters, there are a few photographic cases, but no, I couldn't find any for the drive-in theaters. But
Mhm.
boy, I found some great cases. Here's another
Yeah.
one. May I, real quick?
Yeah, I'll tell you though, before we do, for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Preston Dennett, and we have story time. He has written 42 books, make it up 32, uh, about UFOs and extraterrestrial contact. And these are phenomenal stories. So, also, before we go on, let people know you have a website that people can go to, and also where they can find your books. 32 of them.
Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, I do have a website. It's pretty easy to find if you just punch in my name. The actual website address is prestondennett.weebly.com. I'm all over social media. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, or X, I'm sorry, Reddit, uh, Instagram. Not on TikTok yet. It's hard to keep up, but I
Yeah.
probably should. I do have a YouTube channel. You can find my books at Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and other online retailers. Always working on new books too. So it's an
Yeah,
important
you
subject.
you got a YouTube channel where you interview people too. And wait a minute, wasn't I a guest on there once?
Yes, you were. The Light Gate each Monday
Yeah,
evening with Dolly Saffron. You sure were.
okay, all
You were
right.
very interesting, Augie. You've got some great stories. I had no
hmm
idea. It's like, wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been around a while, some older than some of the hills around here, so I accumulated a few. But also on Amazon, go to Amazon and put his name in there, and you'll find the books. Click on the books that you think sound interesting and read the text about what's in the different books. You're going to find something that's going to blow you away, and you can't live without it. So there you go.
Thanks,
Oh,
Augie.
yeah. Yeah. What was that next story you wanted to tell us?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good ones, but here's one that just really impresses me. It took place in the mid 1960s. This was the heyday, really. It's the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s. After that, drive-in theaters took a steep decline because of VCRs and other
Yeah.
reasons. But this was the #1 American pastime. I mean, they had all kinds of pre-shows and playground rides and balloon rides, and I mean, they really went all out with drive-in theaters. Uh, so this was the 1960s in Mentor, Ohio. It's funny, I have a schoolyard encounter in Mentor, Ohio too. But So everyone's watching the theater when this cigar-shaped object hovers over the theater for about a half an hour until, nobody was watching the movie. So they turned the movie off. Some people were like, no, they're going to see us. Well, of course they're going to see you. At any rate, they turned the movie off. And this is when the real show began. Because this cigar-shaped object, which was pretty large and in a horizontal position, went vertical, up and down, and released 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 smaller disc-shaped craft. So this was essentially a mother ship. These
Yeah.
smaller craft were maybe 10 feet across or so, little two-seaters, I'm guessing. And they proceeded to put on a display for another 10, 15 minutes, just darting all over the place, hovering, turning at right angles, dancing around the sky. And then, this is so interesting to me, they kind of lined up like school children and went doink, 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 doink into the cigar-shaped craft, which then reassumed a horizontal position and darted off at high speed. Can't tell me that's not a display. I mean, that's
Oh, that was,
insane.
yeah, they were showing off. Man,
100%.
that's really something. You mentioned also before we went on the air that there were some people that has been taken on board the ship. I really would like to hear about what did they see inside of the ship? What did it look like? Were the people, were the entities, little grays, or was there also United Air Force people on some of those?
Well, when it comes to the drive-in theater cases, I couldn't find any onboard cases.
Mm-hmm.
And same for the schoolyard. There was some people who definitely saw ETs, but no one really is being taken on board. There were a few who became contactees and would later be taken on board. But oh yeah, I have talked to many people who have had onboard UFO experiences, and it's
Yeah.
really astonishing to me. I do have some favorite cases of that kind. I'd say one of them is from a Navy medic, Kevin Kamin, who was out at sea on a ship and found out his best friend and roommate, who was, gosh, he was an office clerk or something? I forget. At any rate, turns to Kevin one day and says, I'm a contactee. No, I've been in touch with ETs all my life since I was a little kid. They've taken me on their ship. They actually took me to their planet, yada, yada, yada. And Kevin always believed in UFOs. He studied them as a young kid, did a school paper on it, so he kind of knew they were real.
Mm-hmm.
But he did not believe his friend. I'll call him Lewis. Uh,
Ah,
I do know his name. I tried to track him down, but never was able to. At
hmm.
any rate, Kevin's like, oh, if that's true, I want to meet your little green friends. And Lewis is like, okay, I'll talk to them and see if I can arrange it. And a few days later, he's like, well, they took me on board. They took me to your house. And Kevin's like, really? He's like, oh, yeah, and started to describe Kevin's house in detail. So that's when Kevin realized, oh my gosh, either this
That's
guy's a
real.
CIA, something's going on here. There's no way he could know all this. I mean, little details down to a milkshake stain in the back of seat of a car. This kind of specificity.
Yeah.
So this really freaked him out. And it was just a few days after that, he's like, well, I talked to them and they said that they will give you a ride. And Kevin's like, okay, yeah, sure. And the next day, his friend Lewis comes into the cabin and says, they're up on deck. They're waiting for you. Go up on deck. You will see them. This is a Navy ship. It's 600 feet long. There's hundreds of officers on board. It's high noon. He's thinking, this guy's out of his mind. But his cabin was real close to the deck. It was lunchtime. So he walks up on deck, and sure enough, there's this massive craft. He says it had to be at least twice the size of the ship, and really obvious. It was flashing all these colors. It was off a quarter mile away up in the sky. And so he does what I always tell people to do: get another witness. Runs
Yeah.
up to the pup and starts shaking him. Look, look, look. Cannot get his attention. It's as if he's not even there. When suddenly he sees that he is actually on board this craft now, looking through the wall, which is turned transparent, and watching his ship get smaller and smaller and smaller till it's just a little dot in the ocean. And so he's freaking out. He looks down, he's standing on a metal floor, and he's like, oh my God, I'm AWOL. And he hears this voice in his head that says, no, you're not. They don't even know you're gone. Now he's afraid to look around, but he starts to, and he sees this console, which is almost up to his neck. Kind of big for a normal person. And it's got a few colored lights on it. There's metal gray walls. And he hears this voice in his head, a male voice, and starts talking to him. And he asks them, what do you look like? And they said, well, we're not little and we're not green, but our appearance sometimes frightens people.
Yeah.
So that kind of freaked him out. And he's like, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming. He pinched himself. He bled. He pinched himself so hard. Uh, he asked, what do you eat? You're not going to eat me, are you? And they said, no, no, you watch too many horror movies. We eat fruits, vegetables, fish. We eat the same things you do. And he started asking all kinds of questions like, is Roswell real? Because he'd heard of Roswell. And they said, yes. They said, are other governments aware of you? And they said, oh, yeah, all the major governments are absolutely aware of us. They said, we speak all the languages of your planet. And the most interesting thing they told him was, since you started exploding nuclear weapons and bombs, you started a countdown clock. That's the words they used. And at that point, they showed him images of hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides. And they said, all of these will happen. You cannot stop them. You started this chain of events, and they will occur. They showed him a bunch of stuff. They showed him the moon. He thought he was looking down at a crater area in Arizona or something, but then they came up over the horizon, and he could see the Earth off in the background. So finally, he's like, what do you look like? And they're like, we're not little, we're not green. And he just gets the courage to turn around. And I asked him, how big was this room? And he says, well, you're not going to believe me, but it would be like 40 feet wide, and then it would expand to like 100 feet. Because he asked them, where are you from? And they showed him, the room expanded, and they showed him a holographic star chart. He could see the solar system, which shrank down, and way, way, way off in the distance was a blinking red light. And they said, that's our star. That's our solar system. So he turns around finally. It's a big domed room with silver walls, and in the center is kind of a dais, a raised platform with 3 marble white chairs on it that look almost throne-like. They've got very tall, high backs, and sitting in them are 3 praying mantis ETs. They're bone white, they're very thin, with stick-like legs, stick-like arms, tall necks, huge heads, eyeballs, he said, the size of basketballs. And one of them stood up, took 2, 3 steps, and was right next to him. He said, Preston, this thing was more than twice my height. I'm like, well, how tall was it? He says, it was 15 feet tall. I'm like, Kevin, that's pretty tall. Are you sure? He's like, listen, I interviewed him face to face. He's 6'2". He says, it was more than twice my height. It was like looking up at a basketball board. He's a trained observer. He's a medic, a very good witness. He's like, this thing was huge. It radiated intelligence. And it looked down at him. He says, I felt like a bug next to it. Ironically, it's a praying mantis. And it said, would you like to go to our planet? And he said no. I'm like, why would you say? Yeah. Missed opportunity in my book. but I
Yeah.
wasn't there. He's like, Preston, you don't understand. I nearly crapped my pants. And he didn't use those
Yeah.
words. He's a military officer. He swore. And I'm like, you really? He's like, I didn't want to become a specimen. You know, this was very scary. My heart
Yeah.
was thumping the whole time. And the ET, the praying mantis thing, said, okay, took its claw like hand and placed it on his shoulder, which caused Kevin to absolutely lose his mind. He screamed and blacked out, and he woke up not back on the deck of the ship, but back in his bunk, laying down, covered with sweat, hyperventilating, absolutely frightened. Finally got his bearings, and the curtain, you know, that hides your bed,
Yeah.
whipped open, and there's his roommate Lewis, smiling from ear to ear, and says, "So, how did you like your ride?" He didn't. He says, "Never talk to me again. I hate you," and actually severed the friendship.
Mm.
So that's an
Really.
amazing case. He's a twin. His twin
Wow.
brother also has had encounters.
Mm.
So that's one of my favorite onboard cases because there's just
Yeah.
so much to it.
I think that it very often, yeah, his brother also, it very often follows in bloodlines or family lines. Chances are his parents also had contact. You
Yeah,
think?
unfortunately, you know, he didn't ask them. He didn't have the opportunity. Uh, and by the time I got to interview him, he was already in his 60s or so, and he passed about 5 years ago. So did and his brother a few years before that. So I don't know. Uh, he
Uh-huh.
doesn't have kids. So,
In,
but I suspect,
in
yeah, because most contactees, it is generational.
in the middle of this, I'm gonna have to ask you a personal question.
Uh-oh.
If a disc came down, landed in your backyard, door came open, and somebody looked standing in the door, looking like us, doing like this, would you go on the ship and would you go on the ride?
More than likely, yes. But I will say I'm going to use my intuition.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
feel like this is a government craft, because I think we do have this technology and there's some faking going on here. But
Yeah.
yes, I would. I've had a number of encounters, Augie, and in 2022, on my birthday, I had a fully conscious onboard encounter where I was taken from my bedroom in Reseda, California, up an energy beam into a craft, was physically examined, met a tall gray, met other people, other mid-sized grays. I mean, I had full on onboard encounter. So the answer is yes, because I can tell you that one was one of the best experiences of my life. I will never forget it.
Yeah. I can understand where your passion for this comes from. Personal
Oh yeah,
experience.
it's in my family, you know, and I think I have few unexplained childhood incidents myself. But my brother had a very close encounter, and I suspect he was taken on board because he had a little implant in his arm, a little foreign body. And my sister, little sister, definitely, because she's had two or three encounters, one involving missing time. My parents would. I never got to talk about it with my mom. My dad hated this subject to the day he died, would not discuss it. And to me, that's a little bit of a red flag too, because I've learned if you have a strong emotional reaction to this subject, whether you're drawn to it or absolutely repulsed by it, that's a red
Yep.
flag.
Yeah, and that tells me there was a contact
I
that
think
scared
so.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
don't know if he
happens.
consciously recalls it or not, because I think he would have told me. I don't know though. He didn't like the
Mhm.
paranormal. You know, he was quite upset when I started talking about UFOs. And then I'm like, well, I'm
Yeah.
having out of body experiences too, Dad. He's like, oh no, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I don't know
Uh,
why he had psychic experiences and he wouldn't even admit that. Saw it happen. Some really amazing ones. So,
Well,
I don't know. It's hard for people. I get it.
yeah, but if he had an experience that scared the daylight out of him, I can understand why he did not want to visit that experience again.
Yeah, it can be very, very hard for people, especially in
Yeah,
earlier generations where this subject was not talked about
yeah,
really at all. And often it was sort of interpreted to be, a negative spiritual experience. But usually before ETs, people were thinking, this is something to do with the angelic or demonic realm.
yeah,
So if a person was religious, he wasn't, though he was raised in a religious education. I mean, he was taught by angry nuns, is how he put it.
yeah, yeah. And I am thinking of the listeners right now. I know, absolutely know that among the thousands of people that will see this video, there's going to be a whole bunch that have had their own experiences. Would you put something about that in the text below and let us hear a little bit about what you have heard and what you have seen and experienced? We would love to see that in the text because this is a lot more than what we can imagine. I'm going to take another 30 seconds to add something to it, and that is that I'm a retired pilot, and I was interested in UFOs since I was that tall. And when I was sitting around in the pilot lounges at the airport, sometimes waiting for people to come back on a charter flight, I talked to other pilots, and I found that about a third of them, one third, have seen something in the sky or experienced something that they don't want to talk about and can't explain. Another third, they have absolutely seen nothing. And another third, they would say, I don't want to talk about it. So
Wow,
there's a lot more than we think.
I
That can
100%
make,
agree.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
when I interview someone, I ask them, did you report this to MUFON? And usually, almost always, the answer is MUFON? What's MUFON? Or
Yeah,
Newfort, No one calls the
they,
police. They don't call the. I would say 1 in 100. I'm being generous, Aki. 1 in 100 reports it officially in any capacity.
yeah.
So that
And
means
of
because
course, with MUFON too, the really good ones, they wash them out.
I've got
They're
some
not,
evidence of that, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now,
But it's
before we
amazing
got on
because
the,
they receive like 20 reports a day. So if 1 in 100 is reporting, that's 20 times 100. Well, that's 2,000.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Hmm. Now, you also mentioned something about alien books.
Yes, I love finding these patterns, Augie. This is what I did a whole series of books called Not From Here, all about really unusual cases where really weird patterns that haven't been talked about, whether it's UFOs hovering over graveyards or UFOs over mines or phone calls from extraterrestrials or just weird stuff. UFOs over prisons, over airports, over hydroelectric dams.
Yeah,
And I was really interested in the Betty and Barney Hill case, of course, because as she's on board the craft, she asks them, "Can I have an artifact?" And they said, "Sure. What would you like?" She says, "I don't know, anything that will help prove my experience." And the guy who was leading her around said, "Okay, pick something." And she found a loose object, which turned out to be a little blue book, very thin, shiny blue surface. And she says, "I'd like this." And he says, "Well, you won't be able to read it." She says, "That's not the point. The point is, this is proof of my experience." And they are walking, the door's open, the ramp is down. Barney is walking down the ramp. She's at the doorway with her book, her alien book. And one of the guys in the crew says, "Stop!" Take the book back. And they took it from her. She was furious and said, "Hey, that's my proof." And they said, well, that's the point. We can't let you have proof. This could be dangerous. This is not going to be helpful for you. But she was furious because she didn't get her blue book. Gosh, if that
I
had
would
happened,
too.
would have changed the face of UFO research.
Yeah.
But I thought, gosh, that's interesting because I immediately thought of Betty Andreasen, a contactee from Ashburnham, Massachusetts, whose case was investigated by Raymond Fowler. She was given a little blue book. They told her, you cannot show this to anybody. You can keep it for 2 weeks. And she did. It was in her closet. And she did show it to her daughter, Becky, who confirms this. And she described it in the same way, glowing white pages with symbols on it, and a blue metallic shiny surface, and very thin, almost identical to what Betty is talking about, the other Betty. So the ETs took that back too. And I started thinking
Really.
about this. I'm like, well, I think I know a few other cases. It turns out Whitley Strieber had this experience. He was shown a book which he said had a jeweled surface on it. It's always a really beautiful book. And he says this book had information in it about the history of spirituality and religion on Earth, stretching back to prehistory. So that was interesting. There's a Canadian contactee, Jeff Silver, who had this experience. He was taken on board. They showed him a book. He says it was almost like it downloaded information into him because he couldn't remember it at first, but described it the same way. And he later was able to recall what it had, the information it had, which was all about the power of love, how to develop your psychic ability, techniques to do levitation, how to manifest things, this sort, the power of will, and all these kinds of things, very deep philosophical, spiritual subjects. So I started really digging into cases, and I found a number of them. David Jacobs had a case. Richard Boylan had a case. I asked Dolly Safran. I'm like, Dolly, I'm doing research on alien books. I'm interviewing her for the book Symmetry. I'm like, did you ever see a book? And she smiled and said,
she has some incredible stories, man.
oh yeah, she's my favorite contactee because she's moved past fear. She doesn't need hypnosis to recover. She's fully conscious when she's having her encounters.
Yeah.
And it's not just 1 or 10 or 20 or 100. It's over 1,000. So she essentially has spent, all in all, years with the ETs.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy, but I went on board her craft. I know it's true because I'm an experiencer, a participant in her experiences. She's got photographs, medical evidence, healings, corroborating witnesses. Her case is legit, is my point. But at any rate, she's like, oh yeah, I do have a book. I'm not allowed to take it off the craft. When I first saw it, she said it was quite small. Over the years, it's expanded, but it's interactive. She says it has this beautiful emerald surface. She's not sure what it's made out of, but eventually it does have a little image of a dragon. She loves dragons. And she said it contains all kinds of aphorisms and sayings and scientific knowledge. It'll play music. She can ask it questions. It'll display holographic pictures. And it's way beyond what we think of as a book. It's much more Harry Potter-esque. But definitely, it's got that shape, and it's got glassy, kind of glowing pages to it. And
but
she did try to.
Given that book?
Yes.
Was she still have it?
It's on the ship, yep. She tried to take it off once, and boy, she got in trouble. She thought, I'm just going to take it home. And they took it back immediately, and they, chastised her pretty severely.
Man. I tell you, I said, I'll be right over. I want to see that one.
I know, right? But they said, no, 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 you don't understand. This book is very powerful. In the wrong
Mm,
hands, it could be incredibly dangerous, not only
yeah,
for you, but for the person who holds it. And frankly, the information it contains is only for you.
yeah.
And they wouldn't give it. She wasn't allowed to use it for like a month after that.
Mm,
So that was a lesson learned for her.
yeah,
But this
yeah.
is something quite a few contactees describe. It's funny, I did a video about this on my YouTube channel, and I got quite a few responses from people saying, oh, yeah, I had that too. I know she's telling the truth, Dolly, because that's exactly my own
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
So interesting, because you just wouldn't think, like, oh, there's books up on a ship. Well, yeah, it's, they're different, but absolutely, it's fascinating.
yes, it
From what
is.
I understand,
And
we all have our own book. It's kind of
yeah,
uh, like the Akashic Library. It's connected to that in some way.
yeah, and people are running around asking for disclosure. Disclosure has been done. And they say, yeah, there's no evidence. Of course it is. Go to the CIA and the FBI website. Both of them have there's something that is called the smoking gun document. And I've seen it. I've read it. It it says in there if you go to the CIA, you can go into the reading room, and the FBI have a reading room. Go in there and poke around. You can find it as the smoking gun document. And what they are telling us is that yes, UFOs are real, extraterrestrials are here. We communicate with them, but most of them are interdimensionals. It's right in the government annals. And
Yeah, well, I've
many,
got something to say about that. We're all interdimensional, Augie.
yes,
All
yes,
entities are interdimensional. So I'm not sure how helpful it is to say,
yeah,
oh, ETs are interdimensional. Well, of course they are. Who
yeah,
isn't?
yeah,
Uh, I don't think it precludes them from being physical beings either.
absolutely, yeah.
Because I think that's what we're dealing with. I know there's a very popular theory out there that this is an alien interdimensional intelligence control system that wears different masks,
Yeah,
a la Jacques Vallée and John Keel and others. No, 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 no. I think that's dangerous thinking. I think it's conflating different phenomena together that are wholly separate. When a person sees a Bigfoot, that's what it is. When a person has a near-death experience, it follows a
yeah.
fairly set pattern. Same
Hmm.
with a demonic haunting or a ghost encounter, you know, and onboard experience. These are different things. There are also little people on our planet, fairies,
Yes,
elves, gnomes, in every culture. Oh, Augie, I did a video on this. It was so interesting because I interviewed this guy from Colorado who had an elf encounter as a little boy in the 1940s.
ah,
And I'm like, okay, tell me what happened. He was 5 years old, and this elf like being, his height, walked through the wall. It was wearing brown trousers, a shirt, a little brown vest. It was bald. It had large round eyes, a nose, and it was very playful and very wise and spoke to him over his head about all these philosophical topics, but was very fun. Uh, and walked through the wall and was gone. Came back over and over again, five,
yeah,
maybe 10 times. He told his
wow.
mom, yeah, he told his mom, he's like, oh, isn't that interesting? You have an imaginary friend. This is not imaginary. Would always wait until he was alone.
Yeah,
He knows it was physical because it would sometimes lift stuff up and balanced a little jug on its head. It was very playful.
yeah.
It never touched him. He never touched
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And
Oh
one time,
boy,
two of them came.
we're getting down to the end here. Gosh, we got 1 minute left. Let people know where they can go to hold of you again with your website and they can probably reach you through email through the website also, I suppose, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my email
Yeah.
is on my website, or you can email me directly, prestonufo@gmail.com. I'm easy to find if you punch my
Yeah.
name in on all the social media platforms. Uh,
And then Amazon for the 32 books.
that's right, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Also, if you go to my website, prestondennett.weebly.com, I've got all my books there, and you can dive deep. I provide extensive excerpts of each book, so you can, can spend an hours on the website just reading some of my material.
That takes a lot of work. Yeah. Well, gosh, we are down to the end. So this has been so much fun. I really
I always
enjoyed
enjoy.
this.
Yeah, it's always fun, Aage. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, we're having fun when we do this. So I would absolutely thank you very much for being with us, and I'm gonna ask you again sometime because I love having you back on. This is so fun. And for you listeners out there, if you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And then, until next time,